It's 2 a.m. and I'm crying and tired and worn out. If I'm rambling, it's because I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital troubles. I 34F have been with my husband, 37 male, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, 3F, was born, I have been unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small. Background context: when I was 19, after a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me inside it. I have enough metal holding me together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA, and physically impaired with good days and bad days. I used a portion of my settlement check to buy a house outright and have it retrofit to accommodate my needs, as I'll eventually require a wheelchair. I work in software development as it's fun and nobody cares if I work from bed on bad days. My husband has not worked in 5 years. Which has been fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement money, a paid-off house, and my salary, I enjoyed having him here with me. He contributed by handling most of the domestics. We pay for a weekly cleaner with monthly deep cleaning because it gave us more time together. Ever since our daughter was born, it was like a light switch turned off in his head. For our daughter, he would buy the wrong size diapers. Not fully mixed bottles. Put diapers on backwards. Leave out poop-covered wipes. Forget to latch cabinets. This past week, he has gone to the store 3 times because he keeps coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just order the right ones on Amazon. For me, he has tried to help me with my weekly pill organizer fill up, and several times has spilled the contents of new medications all over the floor. Then, not seeing that he didn't get all of them off the floor, he has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my medications with, a huge no. He has repeatedly forgotten that I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee. Or cheese on a burger. He has broken so many things of mine from being careless. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he tried to pack it for a trip. Even after I said I would pack my own electronics. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the disposal. He tried to replace the head gasket in my car and over-torqued the engine bolt, which shattered in, so the block and 2 different shops said they couldn't repair it. We ended up getting a new vehicle because a replacement engine would have cost $11,000. A week later, he crashed the new car into the garage door because he thought he'd press the brakes, not accelerator. He wanted to do TikToks and streaming as a hobby. I supported him initially. But I quickly noticed a pattern. Anything regarding our daughter or me, he was sloppy and careless. He never whooped his own stuff. He would build entire sets to stream or make videos with, leave the garage, and leave his brain in the garage. It came to a head 4 nights ago. He streamed himself building a new set piece. 9 hours straight. Meanwhile I worked, clocked out early to pick up our daughter from summer camp, cooked and fed both of us, got her ready for bed. He came out to help put her to bed. I let him know that I needed to get some work done and would be in my office. And I asked him to take the trash out. He says he will. 2 hours later, I left my office and the house felt really warm. He'd taken the trash out, but left our front door partially open. And was back in the garage with his game volume really loud. I panicked since our daughter is able to get out of bed and thankfully she was sound asleep. But she could have easily toddled right out of the house and he wouldn't have noticed. Then I noticed a stove top burner was on. With a small pot on it with nothing inside. I didn't use the stove for cooking that night. I popped my head into the garage and said, "Hey, I need you for a minute." I informed him of the door situation and he responds, "I thought I locked it." We checked the camera and no, he did not. I asked about the burner being on and he said he was planning to make ramen and forgot. He pulled the still hot pot off the burner and put it straight into the sink on top of our daughter's favorite plastic plate. Which is now ruined. I'll admit I overreacted and screamed, "What are you doing?" He realized what he'd done and pulls the pot off our daughter's plate. And straight onto the countertop. I grab it quickly and run it under water to cool it down. I tell him I can't tonight. I can't deal with him. I'm taking my meds and going to sleep. He gets a cup from the cupboard, and sets it straight onto the burner that had been on. I hit my limit. I started crying. He kept saying that it was fine, things happen, it's just an accident, he's had a rough day from streaming, he's just tired. Why am I crying? It's just a cup. We can replace it. The anger hit and I said it's because I have a liability and not a partner. He said, "What the fuck does that mean?" I screamed that it's because I can't trust him to do anything. That I'm always having to watch him like a child. Always having to bear the costs of his mistakes. That every time I get careless and think I can trust him to be an adult, I'm always the one getting fucked over. I then said, "I can't see you as a partner anymore. You're just another liability in my checkbook." He immediately stormed out of the kitchen and went to bed. I called my mom and told her what happened. She thinks it's just stress and offered to take our daughter for a week so we could figure this out without our daughter seeing it. She says it was an asshole thing to call my husband a liability. In the morning, I told my husband that my mom would pick up our daughter from summer camp and offered to watch her for a week. He said okay, and that's the only interaction we've had since. He spends all day in the garage playing games with his friends, making TikToks, and streaming. For food, he's been ordering DoorDash and having the person deliver it in the garage. It's been days and he refuses to be in the same room as me. I've tried messaging him to ask if we can talk. Or figure out a solution. But he's just left me on read. If I pop into the garage, he ignores me but apologizes to his friends or viewers for the interruption and geek unmute his mic when the noise stops. Before the blow up, I've asked if there was something going on. I tried to gently respond every time he screwed up so our daughter didn't associate mistake to anger. I asked him to schedule with a doctor to see if something was going wrong medically. He always said I was overreacting, people make mistakes. And didn't see an issue, even when the same mistakes kept happening. When I tried to get him to understand that it was concerning just how expensive his mistakes were getting, he'd wave it off as it's not like we can't afford it. I love him dearly, I just miss the person he was before we had a child. The one I could trust and rely on. Did I screw this up forever? Was I being too harsh on his mistakes? Update 1. Before I get into the update, going to answer some repeated questions. Why does my husband not work? He can easily find employment, but we both agreed that the pay was never worth the toxic environment of his field unless he wanted to start his own business, which he did not. He worked in home repair and renovation. It was gross how his coworkers spoke of and treated women, female customers and coworkers alike. He saw many female coworkers be sexually harassed into quitting. He hated how gross it made him feel when sales and adjusters would take advantage of women. Yes, selling inferior and unnecessary services at a premium is a thing. If he said anything, his hours would get cut until he left. He left one job on the first day because his boss left a screaming voicemail for not selling a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need refrigerant. Yes, he's got documentation and reported multiple employers to the state labor board. And checked back. Nothing was ever done to our knowledge. He's also tried a factory job and a warehouse since leaving the trades. Both heavily penalized him for needing scheduled time off for my medical needs. There's no worker protection here for any of that until FMLA, unpaid, which takes a year to be eligible for. Yes. It is a privilege to walk away from a paying job with your middle fingers held high. I have done the same many times, but I'm happy where I'm at right now because it's the opposite of toxic. I'm thriving and our company has a no penalty, unlimited paid sick/medical leave policy that is strictly enforced at all levels of management. Any lead who penalizes people for taking leave gets sacked. A unicorn of a company. Add in a child and short of finding another unicorn employer who won't penalize him for needing time off for me or our daughter, such as when daycare closed for a week due to an RSV outbreak, puts him out of the workforce until either I stop working or our child old enough to not need consistent monitoring. Last reason for this dynamic is that although I'm disabled, my job pays almost double the highest salary he's ever had. With no reduction in pay for needing time off. It doesn't make financial sense for us to switch who the working partner is. 2. Does my husband have a large following or make money from streaming/TikTok? No. His lives have an average of 6 viewers. And his Twitch has 3 followers. When we did our taxes, he didn't get a $1,099 and he showed me that he'd got all of $6 from TikTok live gifts. Nothing from Twitch. His viewer counts are about the same as end of last year. 3. Why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and have our daughter in summer camp and part-time daycare? I hate the dynamic of O.N.E. spouse working a single job for 40 hours a week while the other juggles simultaneous domestic duties, child rearing, care, enrichment, socialization, and essentially being on call 24/7. I would not want those expectations of me and couldn't fathom putting all of it on someone I love and cherish. If my husband did all of the activities and field trips that daycare did, his evenings and weekends would be taken up by domestic duties that I would physically struggle with assisting. The weekly housekeeper helps prevent deferred cleaning paralysis, where small missed things pile up into unwieldy monster tasks and struggling with where to start. The monthly deep clean and organization has been a world of self-care as we navigated to having an infant and the transition from infant to toddler. 4. The allowance thing. Yes. I wanted a dynamic where my husband had his own money even if he was not working a paying job. Maybe I've been on social media too long, but I've read so many stories of non-working spouses, albeit mostly women, being financially abused or unable to leave marriages because they did not have access to money they could save up in private. Should I have stopped it sooner when our dynamic became too unbalanced? Yes. I own that. 5. As for what happens if/when we divorce, the house and settlement balance is in a trust completely separated and as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up for a judge to decide, but between my documentation, that his licenses/certs aren't expired, plus my continual medical costs, Teresa a good chance of not being obligated. Hopefully that answers most or all of the background related questions. On to the update. Friday I finished work to the smell of food being cooked. My husband was plating dinner on the table when I left my office. He said he wanted to talk over dinner. Some people had given me a heads up that my story was on multiple TikToks and I'm grateful because it meant being prepared for possibility he would see it. Which, I have feelings about my post being used for content on the very platform my child and I have been neglected for. Not good ones. He did see one. He asked if it was me and I told him the truth. Yes, I wrote it. Yes, that's how I feel. And yes, I read the comments on Reddit. And no, I won't delete or change how I write about him just because I know he can see it. I don't know how to describe his reaction, but he said he'd spent the last day reflecting on just how bad could it be for so many medical diagnosis suggestions be given as reason and justification. He did say that he's not ADHD. His mom was addicted to opioids and Ritalin when he was a kid, and she tried to get numerous doctors to have him diagnosed ADHD. She had him believing he was, so he also sought out 2 opinions once he was an adult. He didn't learn about her addiction until his mid-20s. He did seek therapy once he was aware that his mom was trying to use him for pills. He said he was willing to see a psychiatrist one more time, but he doesn't think he's ADHD or autistic at all. He does think he might be depressed though. If not depressed, he will ask about some of the other medical suggestions if it will ease my worry or rule out a major problem. He did sound genuine in this, but something he said is sticking with me. He said it jokingly and apologized as soon as he saw the hurt in my eyes. That everyone saying there's something wrong in his brain must be onto something, since he chose to love and marry someone medically fragile, knowing our life together would be anything but normal. He did also admit that the night he'd left the door open, the pot on, ruined our child's favorite dish, and a cup, he drank a little too much on his stream. And would monitor that more closely. He said the last few nights, he had been filling his wine bottle with grape juice so it looked like he was a jolly drinking Viking, but was actually sober. He said he would keep doing After dinner, we went out and he surprised me with seeing the new Deadpool movie. We didn't go to our normal theater because he looked up what each theater had for limited edition popcorn buckets. I now have the baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. We spent the next day going over the extent of how our family dynamic changed for the worse. How the little things have added up. How I see change as a part of an apology. If you verbally apologize but repeatedly do the same thing, the apology words are worthless to me. And that he didn't recognize just how frequently he was making the same/similar oopsies. Sunday, we spent talking over short and long term. What needs to change immediately, him scheduling his own doctor appointments. Timelines for expectations. He agreed that replacing or fixing things he caused will no longer come out of our expense account. He will pay it from his allowance account. Which we talked about. I did turn deposits back on, but only for $50 per paycheck. He suggested we keep it that way until he's paid back the cost of repairing the garage and car from earlier this year. He said it will take him far longer to undo the cost of destroying the engine to my last vehicle, but that he's going to step up and find ways to make it right. Just so you know. Yes. I see the red flags. Love bombing. Not knowing how frequently despite repeated talks. Thinking verbal apologies are the final step in apologizing, and not understanding that repeatedly doing the same problem thing is the same as never apologizing. And yes, I know he will read this. Do I actually think this is resolved and we will come out of this as a perfect married couple who stays together until one of us croaks? Not really. Full offense to husband, for now. Is it a potential resolution? Maybe. But my husband is fully aware that he has a lot to make up for, a lot to fix, and a tight schedule to make it happen. And that the lesson for our daughter, later in life, is either going to be taking real accountability can steer a wayward ship back to course. Taking accountability is the right thing to do, even if you don't get the results you wanted, or love alone isn't enough. Now on to next story. Boyfriend's fear of hurting me during sex has caused us to go months without any intimacy, leaving me feeling lonely and unfulfilled. I, 24F, and my boyfriend 23M have been dating for nearly 2 years. I'll skip the unnecessary details about our relationship, but we have a very solid one. We live together and have only really argued once in our entire relationship. However, there is a problem. A little over a year ago I developed thrush. For those of you who don't know, it's basically where a woman's vagina becomes very fragile and she is prone to tearing/blistering/small cuts. It itches a little, too. My God, was that horrific. I was on and off trying different creams, but I was so stupid because my sex drive was incredibly high. My boyfriend, I'll call him Dave for the sake of this post, also had a high sex drive. We're talking boners every day, multiple times a day, maybe up to 8 to 12 times a day depending on what we were up to. We would have sex twice a day, every day for a little over a year. I was vocal about my thrush and there were times where I thought it would go away, so I gave myself the green light and we went at it. To anyone reading this, if you or your partner have thrush, please wait at least a week until symptoms end until you have sex again. Please. Because man, it isn't worth it. Every time we had sex, something down there would tear. Thank God he didn't contract it, but I would yelp in pain and I'd have to clean up blood from our bedsheets. It was hell. After around 2 months of me thinking I healed, us trying again, and then me ripping seconds after penetration, he stopped initiating. I totally understand why. It took me about a month and a half of no sex to heal from thrush. I told him that I officially was healed, and he said that he was happy I was okay. However, he wouldn't initiate anything. So I did. I tried everything in the book. I dressed up. I tried dirty talking him. Strutting around naked. You name it, I tried it. Now, our physical affection wasn't affected. We would cuddle for hours, still. It was our sexual affection that ended. After about 3 months of this, I decided to confront him. I asked him what was wrong, and what I could do to make him attracted to me again. After a very long pause, he said that he was still attracted to me. He was just scared of hurting me again. I suggested that we could start slow, maybe just blowjobs, fingering, doing finger stuff, whatever. He agreed, saying that he would like to try it out. A few weeks passed and I tried initiating to no avail. Every time I would try, he'd just kiss me on my forehead and hug me, saying "aw." All followed by cradling me along with more pecks on my forehead, cheek, and lips. Now, this is very cute, but after getting rejected time and time again, it began to hurt. It's been 3 months since then. Recently I brought it up. I didn't want him to think all I wanted in a relationship was sex, so I didn't talk to him about it sooner. But I realized it was taking a toll on my mental health, so I thought it would be best to communicate how I felt. I told him exactly this, and I asked why he wasn't horny around me anymore. He said, "I don't know. But I'll find out what's going on eventually." And that was the end of the conversation. He recently took a blood test and everything was fine. All of his levels were perfectly normal/healthy. He rides his bike 3 to 5 kilometers daily and has a decent social life. Not a lot of drinking, either. He jacks off maybe twice a week, which is completely fine with me. He doesn't watch porn. At least, if he does, it'll be a once or twice a month thing. Another thing to note is that I haven't gained or lost any weight since our relationship started, so I don't think it's anything like /that/. Recently I've been feeling so lonely. No, I will absolutely not cheat on him or seek attention elsewhere. But I feel like less of a woman. I have to go lock myself in the bathroom and turn the bath water on to bawl my eyes out while he's in the other room. I don't want him to see me like this. It's like we're roommates who cuddle, kiss, and have deep conversations. He used to get boners just looking at my clothed body. What changed? I asked if he possibly was traumatized from my thrush. "Am all good down there now?" And he said he wasn't. I don't want to be a controlling girlfriend and tell him he has to have sex with me. Small update, while this is getting attention, sorry it couldn't be a more interesting post, but I've gotten some lovely advice. I am going to assume that he's traumatized but in denial, so a lot of patience is needed for this. I decided that I will slowly show him that nothing is wrong by, gosh, sorry for the TMI, presenting myself to him with a dildo inside. Obviously I won't just drop my pants when he gets home from work, lol. But I'll slowly ease him into watching and see what happens from there. Another update, thank you for the responses. I've gotten some interesting advice from all of you. It varies from, tell him you are thinking about cheating, to Heskay to he's been seeing someone else, to go to couples therapy, and if the above doesn't work, I believe I will suggest going to couples therapy. I forgot to add that I have vaginismus. I'm a total catch, aren't I? And that may have led to thrush/my yeast infection. I will absolutely not cheat on him or threaten him with a breakup. However, I will mention very verbally, but kindly, of course, that this is making me sad. So much so that it plagues my mind every day, and I'll even mention to him the whole crying in bathroom thing, as much as I don't want to. I am on vacation for another 25 days, so I won't have an update until then. Update 1. I returned from my trip abroad after leaving for 1 month. It was very hot in the city we live in together, and it is uncommon to have an AC in this country, Germany. So, I decided to purchase a fan. Now, that was a whole situation on its own, and I even posted it on my profile here nearly a month ago. Long story short, my boyfriend, 24 male, was feeling uncomfortable about me getting a fan. I promise this ties into my update, and was so upset about it, that when the fan arrived he was visibly upset and went as far as walking out of the room without speaking to me for a few hours. He later came into my room on hour 3, after I made a Reddit post about my confusion about the fan, and told me that we needed to talk. He said he needed until tomorrow to explain himself, though. So I waited. He sat me down the next day and began with the weirdest thing. I don't get excited about things you get excited about. What? For instance, the fan. I don't. I'm not excited about it. I told him that I would be more than happy to move the fan into the living room, where I could sleep on the guest bed during warm nights. He shook his head and told me it wasn't about the fan, and he didn't know why he brought that up. He paused for a long while and began to tell me what was going on with him. And no, it wasn't what anyone suspected. A bit of important background: when we first started dating 2 years ago, on the 3rd date I told him that I wanted children in the future, and I only wanted to be with him if we could be together for the long term. He was happy that I wanted children. I then told him that it was not my wish to be pregnant. I wanted to adopt kids, or if his bloodline was important to him, I would consider surrogacy. He said he was okay with this. Well, months passed. 2 years passed. Apparently, this whole time, he hasn't been intimate with me because he wanted us to have a real family where I would get pregnant. At the moment, I am 25 years old and I don't even want to think about pregnancy. He is 24. Here in Germany it is very uncommon to have children at a young age, and we both agreed that we wanted kids when we're anywhere between 30 to 35 years old. So this took me by surprise. I simply cannot fathom how you don't want to have sex with your partner because you dislike the idea of adopting children with them in the far future. He says he felt guilty for feeling this way, and was trying to come to terms with it. He kept on trying to get over this feeling and hoped that it would pass, but every time I brought up our future he shut himself down. I noticed that he was much more hesitant to talk about the future, to fantasize about where we would live, what we would name our kids, what our day-to-day lifestyle would be, so I stopped pestering him about it. I heard that Germans like to take things slow, and I didn't want him to think I was rushing him. But I should have brought it up more. I know I should have. I kept on convincing myself that I was being too clingy and pushy about our future together, so I was able to simply stop asking about it altogether. We immediately decided to split up, and I decided to move out because moving stresses him out, and he had a huge exam coming up that he needed to focus on. Luckily I found an apartment. It's sadly very expensive, so I'm now trying to find a roommate, which has been very stressful. Between the breakup, searching for a new roommate, moving, and working, I'm going crazy. I want him back. We spoke about getting back together, but he said something along the lines of, "I don't know. I love you. But I guess if I really loved you enough, I would have stuck with you through anything. And I didn't." What does that mean? I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I'm still making that mistake by not trying to work things out. But maybe this is the right decision. I don't know, Op. I wish you would have told me that your mom suffered from many miscarriages before having you. Maybe that would have changed my ND. But I made up my mind at the time, and it looks like I have to stick with it. Or not? I don't know. I know I should have told him about the whole my mom had like 10 miscarriages before having a baby, but I didn't think that was important, as I have many reasons for not wanting to get pregnant. It just isn't my thing. And you know, if he did love me like he always told me he did, he would stick with me through this. But he isn't. That's my answer. I don't want to accept it, but that's just how it is. You know the saying, if he wanted to, he would. Well, I'm a true believer in that. He's been crying daily, and while I do appreciate him helping me move out of our apartment, it keeps giving me false hope when he comes over to set something up for my new place. I keep thinking, oh, he'll come around, except he doesn't. It's only been 3 weeks, but he seems so incredibly lost and hurt over this that it isn't worth it for me to give this a second thought. I am utterly heartbroken. I wish we could have talked this out rather than jumping to a breakup solution, but I don't have any answers to this problem. I know better than to wait for him to come back to me, but my God, my mind is telling me to do so. Life has become much more complicated, and I don't even know if I want to live in this city. I'm so defeated right now. All of our friends and family members have told us that there has to be more to his story. There has to be another reason as to why he doesn't want to mend things. But I've asked over and over again, and he said it was this single bump, for lack of a better word. I thought, aside from our lack of sex, that our relationship was perfect.